Every week on Cyberwork, listeners ask us the same question. What cybersecurity skills should I learn? Well, try this. Go to infosecinstitute.com/free to get your free cybersecurity talent development ebook. It's got in-depth training plans for the 12 most common roles, including SOC analyst, penetration tester, cloud security engineer, information risk analyst, privacy manager, secure coder, and more. We took notes from employees and a team of subject matter experts to build training plans that align with the most in-demand skills. You can use the plans as is or customize them to create a unique training plan that aligns with your own unique career goals. One more time, just go to infosecinstitute.com/free or click the link in the description to get your free training plans, plus many more free resources for Cyberwork listeners. Do it. infosecinstitute.com/free. Now, on with the show. Today on Cyberwork, I'm happy to bring back returning Cyberwork guest Susan Morrow for her fourth appearance and her first since 2019. Susan, simply put, is plugged into every aspect of digital identity currently being discussed, and she takes us deep into the security, ethical, practical, and UX hurdles of current identity practices, and gives us both an optimistic and pessimistic version of the digital identity practices that might be coming in 10 years. Keep it right here for Cyberwork. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, we talk with a different industry thought leader about cybersecurity trends, the way those trends affect the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for breaking in or moving up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. So today is my returning guest, former Cyberwork guest, Susan Morrow. She's an ex-chemist who transitioned into the IT security sector in the early 1990s, where she became the founder of a cybersecurity startup. Since then, she has built a knowledge base across diverse areas, including encryption, digital rights management, digital signatures, privacy, and online identity. Susan has been involved in identity projects addressing government, enterprise, and consumer needs. She has helped design and commercialize award-winning software solutions used by organizations of all sizes worldwide. Susan was listed as one of the most influential women in technology in the UK in 2020, 2021, and 2022 via Computer Weekly. She was also shortlisted in the top 100 women in tech in 2021. Susan is also involved in the Economic Injustice Project, looking to provide a platform for social change in the UK. That's economicinjustice.org.uk. Her mantra is design for a digital life, not just digital identity. Susan, thank you for joining me again. It's always great to see you. Welcome back to Cyberwork.
You too, Chris. It's always great to see you. You're looking well.
Thank you very much. Very much enjoying the conversations. So, if you are new to the show, Susan's told her cybersecurity journey on several previous episodes. There's an early one on passwords. There's one on GDPR. And there's one on her many years as a woman in the industry. And I highly recommend you listen to all three to get caught up. So, we've known each other for quite some time, and Susan's contributed dozens of great articles for our Infosec resources site, and I highly recommend you check those out. So I know you as someone who is both well-versed in privacy regulations like GDPR, blockchain researcher, and more, but right now it seems like digital identity occupies a great deal of your investigation and work. So put simply, what is digital identity and what are the issues and considerations surrounding it? What aspects specifically are interesting to you at the moment?
So I've been working in digital identity for about a decade. Okay. And there's been a lot of changes alongside changes in general, sort of cloud computing, that type of thing, opening up the perimeter. It's added a lot of challenges to digital identity. Sorry for the air quotes, folks, but I have a few issues around the use of the term digital identity, and I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And the reason for that is because it causes, language is important. Yeah. And digital identity has caused a few conflations, with different use cases of doing stuff. Yeah. Because let's face it, technology is just there to help us to do stuff, isn't it? That's what technology is, right? And digital identity is no more than just doing stuff. And the problem with adding the term identity to it is that it starts to get a little bit kind of emotional.
Yeah.
People want to make it more than what it is. And over the years, it has caused some kind of painting into the wall of what an identity is, what it conveys, how it's used, what it reflects. There's also a lot of complexity within the landscape of digital identity. It's really unusual. So I came out of cybersecurity, and so 11 years ago, I was just doing cybersecurity, right? So, and when I came into the digital identity arena, it was like a culture shock because it was so complicated. Digital identity, I'm not saying digital identity. I'm not saying that security isn't complicated.
Yeah, right. But it was a whole new type of complicated.
A whole new level of complexity because it really is where technology and human beings intersect.
Yes.
It's that intersection that makes it really complicated, especially when you work in things like citizen ID and consumer identity-driven transactions. That's where it gets really messy. And of course, cybersecurity is coming along on the coattails of those same complex issues. But anyway, so to me, digital identity is probably a misnomer, but I will use it throughout this podcast because people know what that means.
Right.
And we've kind of made our bed with it. But there are different ways of looking at the whole thing. The landscape is vast. There are competing and sometimes adverse factions within the landscape, and I don't think it needs to be. I think it's big enough for everybody. I think the use cases for a digital identity are vast, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there needs to be more than one way to skin a cat. And consumer and citizen identity is the perfect example of that because not everybody has a smartphone. I'll leave it at that, and I'll bring that back later on.
All right, well, I'm not letting you leave it there because I have a few more questions here. But so I just wanted to sort of pull in on something you said there, that digital identity is maybe being made more complicated than it needs to be vis-a-vis just something that allows us to do stuff, because the word identity specifically confers with it this sense of like, you're not just your digital thumbprint, but almost like your digital birth certificate or your digital social security card or your adult, is that it? It's that it has this sort of inference of like, this is your whole life. And it's this glowing orb kind of thing. And so people are adding more to it than they need to. Is that it?
There is an aspect of that. I'll come more onto that when we talk about, because I do want to talk more in depth about the different use cases for digital identity, the different ways that it can be presented.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, it can become extreme. The thing is it is extremely complex, and it does need layers of protocols, and every possible aspect of cybersecurity you can think of comes into play, which I know is like your next question.
Yeah. So it's complicated because it needs to be complicated. Okay. So so let's talk about that. Where does identity interface with the day-to-day work of cybersecurity in your findings, and what are the biggest security risks around identity as it's currently being formed?
So it's kind of always been a little, because I came out with cybersecurity into identity. And the reason I did that, by the way, was because I was doing digital rights management and control of data at a very granular level, right? And documents and that type of thing, and digital sign and that type of thing. And it was getting more and more difficult to actually identify the person who was accessing the document. Yeah. And so, hang on a minute, this is getting really messy with cloud computing, and people like coming outside of the perimeter into it and so on. So when I started to get involved in identity, and it was being kind of like, it was being represented as something outside of cybersecurity, I was very confused, and still am.
Yeah.
The two are starting to, because I'll tell you this, Chris, digital identity overlaps with cybersecurity in every possible part you can think of. Like, I'm trying to think of something that doesn't impact it. So when you design an identity system or do the solution architecture for an identity system, you have so many moving parts, including the human operator, not both the human using it and the administrator, for example, and other people who are working on configuration and, that type of thing, there are so many pieces that need to intersect with cybersecurity. You wouldn't believe it. So I wrote a few down, and then I thought, my God, it's easier to actually say what isn't. And then I couldn't think of anything. So, authentication is one that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Authentication. That security puzzle of getting usability right and security right, it's at the cutting edge digital identity of that security usability balance. It's the cutting edge. Secure coding. My God. So a lot of identity systems, the skills gap comes into play here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people turn to open source for and I'm using the term identity in the loosest sense here. Their account creation, and access to web resources, that type of thing. And they turn to open source because they haven't got the in-house skills to do it. Yeah. Right. But the problem is you need to be able to understand that open source and the vulnerabilities that could be in it with respect to its use within a wider identity system. So that's a problem. So secure coding is really important. Of course, then you have identities at the cutting edge of scams. Yeah. So various scams, utilize aspects or elements of digital identity. Yeah. So database security. Yeah, database security, vital. So, TLS security of transmission of data between the different parts of the ecosystem. Getting that right. API security, because everything is connected now in the identity ecosystem through API. API security, both the access of the API and the actual, integration of API calls, and all the rest of it.
And API, it seems like it's like the big attack vector right now. Like we've already had several people talk about something that was just so back of mind is all of a sudden like that's the next place where all the sort of the nasties are jumping in.
Well, exactly, and all these parts are weak part. All these parts are attack points.
Yeah.
When you're designing and developing the architecture for these systems, no matter who's part of it, I'll come on to the ecosystem. It's such a big, wide, ecosystem potentially that you have to cover every single little part of this. Because you have to be extremely knowledgeable about cybersecurity to be able to build good and robust identity systems. And I could go on. Account fraud, AML and anti-fraud checks, KYC, these are all part of identity systems. It literally has fingers in every security pie out there. And of course, phishing. Yep.
And I want to just focus on one thing you mentioned with regards to secure coding, because we talk about secure coding sometimes, and it's one of our 12 career roles, and it's a thing that people are interested in. So if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, secure coding, obviously it's a set of best practices in terms of when you're creating something new, but you're also saying that knowledge of secure coding you can also use that as sort of an auditor of open source materials. And by knowing secure coding principles, you can be the secure coder on your team who can look at, well, we're going to use these 5 open source things, and you can say, watch for this, watch for this, watch for this.
Yes, absolutely. It's if somebody's good at that sort of thing, then that is absolutely worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
It's where the book stops. You can cover every other base. But if you've left a silly hole in your code, then they'll find it. Leave it open, and they will come.
Yes, absolutely. So we've given a laundry list of all the hard work being done in identity. What's the hardest work currently being done in identity? What are the big problems being at least addressed and considered, if not yet solved?
Right. So I'll come back to the ecosystem. So it's kind of just sort of bubbling up under the surface at the minute and this is an area that I work in, and that's why I'm very aware of it. When I was talking about the factions earlier on, well, it looks from the outside, right, that people who build sort of identity, like sort of more traditional identity systems, are at odds with the wallet people. Yeah, like the self-sovereign wallet people.
Right.
And non-self, you can get non-self-sovereign wallets as well. And it feels like they're at odds, but they're actually not. In fact, I would argue that because digital identity has many use cases, then you need to have something in place that can use all of the identity systems that are already out there. So, for example, the reuse of identity is one of the things that keeps popping its head up. And the thing is that we need to stop, wherever possible, creating random identity accounts of everybody left, right, and centre, because they're just going to get hacked. Let's face it.
Yeah, right.
So we need to avoid that. But people already exist as identity providers. For example, banks. Yeah. And identity wallets have some pieces of, identity data in there. And it doesn't just have to be a bespoke wallet. It could be your Apple wallet that happens to have your driver's license in it, for example. Yeah. So you need some plumbing, to allow the water to flow through the lines to get to the right tap. Yeah. So it's the plumbing piece, but it needs to be smart enough to be able to do a number of different things, because because there are loads of different services want to use loads of different identity pieces.
Right.
And then you've got people in the middle who need to control that, need to be put in control of that as part of a privacy initiative, as well as anything else. You need to have some plumbing that can do a lot of different jobs. For example, protocols are very important in the identity space, right? For the like a sort of language between all the different pieces, but not everybody speaks the same language. Or some people can speak a bit of the language, but then they don't have some other aspects of that language.
Yep.
So you need the plumbing to be able to translate the languages, or to be able to take some of the heavy load weightlifting of the service people, the web developers who don't have the in-house skills, to really utilize some of the really beautiful aspects of some of these protocols that are coming out. Some really beautiful aspects of protocols coming out in OIDC, that sort of area. And some of those that I'll come on to later. You need someone to do the heavy lifting, because just like a lot of people don't have knowledge of secure coding and checking open source libraries.
Yeah.
Web developers don't have complex knowledge of protocols.
Yeah.
Generally. You need to do the heavy lift. You need to make it so it's steady. You've heard of the low code revolution. It's really, there is a reason for that. You need to do the heavy lifting for people. The plumbing does the heavy lifting for people.
Yep.
It can go off, it can search around and find the right type of identifier, for that particular transaction. And then if that's not enough, it can go off and find another one from somewhere else. Rather than reinventing the wheel every time and saying, right, okay, we don't have this data, can you please give us it? And we'll store it for you insecurely. You need to start pulling in all of these accounts that we keep creating and think, hang on a second, it's already done. Let's stop doing this.
Yes. Yeah.
But you need the right bits in the middle to be able to use all of the different existing wallets or banks or government services or whatever, and bring all those pieces of data together. And obviously these middle bits are going to have to be able to do some fancy stuff like privacy enhancement, that type of thing, minimization of data. There's lots of, but you know what? This stuff has already been done. Right, it's already been done over the past 10 years. The systems are in place, the mechanisms are in place to do it all. We just need to start doing it. So I think that going back to what's the hard work is convincing the industry that we can all work together to do a better UX for everybody, and stop. If you must insist on building wallets, there's a big push for wallets at the minute, right? I have reservations about it, but I think it's going to happen. And I don't think there's anything I can do about it. And the reservations come from the fact that not everybody has a smartphone or wants to use it.
Right.
And I'll give you a personal example, which I've already told people about before. I was once signing up for a crypto platform account. and I had to go through a minimal amount of KYC. And I had to do my passport, take a picture of my passport and a picture of me. And at the same time, I had to kind of hold them up. Well, I've got like this condition, and sometimes my hands just don't work, right? And so I drop things, and I kind of hold things, and it's really difficult.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it. I couldn't use it. It didn't work. Right? Not everybody wants to use smartphones. Not everybody has one. Amazingly enough, right? People need options. They need options.
Yes.
So, bring out wallets, bring out, apps. That do one-off jobs with identifiers. Do that, but that's not the end of the story. Yeah. You need to give people choice. And certainly you need to give commercial enterprises online choice in how their very wide audience uses their service. Otherwise they're going to they're cutting out a whole sector, aren't they?
Now, this might be an imperfect metaphor, but this sounds, speaking of UK versus US, I think of like the old VCR, NTSC versus PAL. These identity systems are kind of being developed at the same time, but neither side wants to step, or VHS versus Beta, no one wants to step down. So you have all these competing identity systems. Is that sort of what we're having?
It does feel like, so there's obviously a lot of investment going into the wallet development side of things. So the self-sovereign people came out a few years ago and developed this idea of privacy enhanced self-sovereign. At the time it was blockchain based. It doesn't have to be blockchain. Blockchain-based, decentralized identities for a damn good reason, because people, were sick of centralized identities being, attacked, or governments controlling them, or whatever reason people had. They didn't want to. Fine, I get that. Like, nobody gets that more than me, Chris. Believe me, you know me well. However, the actual reality, it's still they're still working on it. But I can see it coming. And that's fine. But what I can also say is, because there's so much investment gone into it, there's so many companies now investing in wallets, that there's going to be, how these things do? They shake out, and you're left with a few. And the problem is, at the minute, is that their competitors are people like existing incumbent wallets, like Apple Wallet and, the Android Wallet. And already they're making plays in that space. So they're going to have to compete with things that are already there. So people don't have to download yet another app. Yeah, because I've already got them. So I'll just use that. Can't be bothered. So that's the problem. That's the concern about this. It will shake out. There will be some. And I can see that. I can see maybe, if there were, they're going to, so the AI in Europe, so the EU is working on, so, in Europe, there's a European-wide identity scheme, BID, and they're now looking at moving that to a wallet. So the IDAS is going to be on a wallet, decentralized probably, and that I can see that taking off, because it's a government push, and people are used to in Europe using a central identity type system. Although this will be decentralized, but they're used to using this government identity. I can't see that happening in America. The UK would be a stretch in the UK. You never know. The UK changes sometimes. But it just it depends. Citizen ID actually is one of the things that has an unusual use case. That is one of the places where I would say that identity is probably a decent use, within that use case context. Because but the problem is governments. So the decentralized idea of decentralization, right, is one of its kind of Achilles heels, is that very documents that they're decentralizing, identity documents they're decentralizing, are issued by governments centrally. So it's kind of like okay, but no, but
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. I mean, you know what? I'll be attacked for saying this, because but bring it on.
Yes. I got your back, Morrow. You got your back.
But you know what? The market will decide. The market will decide. But there's room for everything. Room for everything.
Right. To that end, identity obviously intersects quite a bit with some other topics we regularly discuss on the show. And we've talked a little bit about already, like data collection, PII breaches due to mishandling of personal data. Those are a little further down the chain here. But obviously part of this is on the security industry's lap. But I want to hear what you think about how identity can address some of these issues as well. If we have a robust and secure system, decentralized system of digital identity, the issue of who's using these credentials to access your health data and financial records is probably going to be a little more narrow. Is that right?
Potentially. Depends if you look at it from. It depends how you look at it, really. So one of the sort of W3C and YDC sort of kind of initiatives is the use of verifiable credentials. Mm-hmm. In the identity system, just to confuse everybody, in identity, credentials means like age, name, that type of thing. Whereas in cybersecurity, it means like, password and username, that type of thing. Yeah, and 2FA, that type of thing. So it gets a bit confused. So when I use the word credentials in this particular sector, what I mean is name, address, that type of thing. So verifiable credentials is now built into OIDC, so that you should, as a service, be able to, like health service, be able to check that those credentials that are being handed over during the flow, during the request response, flow, are verified, by a sort of a trusted source. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess this comes down to as well a little bit of zero trust in there. So as long as you can verify that those credentials are as true. I mean, it all comes down to probability. Yeah. It's as true as you feel comfortable as a service. Yeah. To then allow access, as long as you do it in real time, which you can do, and you make sure that those credentials are verified. The protocols now, are set up to give you that data, that information. Yeah. Or you can do it on the fly. You don't have to do it through the verifiable credentials route. You could do it alternatively, just do a real time on the fly check of a credential that you need. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. Lots of different, as there are as many wallets coming into the market, there are as many APIs that do verification checks against things like document ID and name, address, that type of thing. Age as well, age apps and that type of thing to check your age. Okay. So that's a positive, because you can do verified real-time checks of data before you allow access. So it's never trust, always verify in action.
Right.
So that's sort of one aspect of it. Again, you can again, this is where the plumbing comes in as well, because you might decide, it's not quite enough, actually. Thank you very much for that. It's not quite enough. Can you just give me a little bit extra? They might not have it available in like a wallet, so you don't want to ruin the user experience by saying, oh, bye-bye. You want to be able to do it much more flexibly, where you can say, I just need a little bit more proof, before I give you access. And so, or you can, risk-based authentication has always been there. So, you can start to pull in. You can use rules, if you like, to start to just add more and more and more layers of security to really do that, to really make zero trust actually happen, rather than just talk about it.
Yeah, and not just be a marketing term for that matter. So what I'm hearing a little bit too is it sounds like we have all of the tools to succeed. It's just going to be a matter of deciding as on a large scale which ones we're going to choose to use and adopt and so forth.
Well, this is where the design of identity systems comes into play. So identity isn't just about technology. It's about people. It's about processes. It's about liability, because this is all about data.
Right.
Yeah. It's about all of those things. So the designers of identity systems, the people who start, the business analysts, the solution architects, all of those people have to really, truly understand at a really granular level how the people who are going to be using the system want to use it in all of the different aspects and all of the different I hate using the word, but edge cases.
Mm-hmm.
In identity, you don't have edge cases. You just have use cases and lots of them. And people who design these systems need to go through them very thoroughly to be able to get the best out of an identity system, because there are so many choices.
Right. Okay, so I want to sort of pivot from that into more of a speculative sort of aspect. So where you see where we're going now? Where do you see digital identity changing in, say, the next 10 years? Could you give me like a pure optimist and a pure pessimist version of what it looks like in the next decade?
Sure. So the pessimist one would be that we still nobody's really making any progress in terms of reducing the number of accounts being created online.
Right.
Identity accounts are already in existence, continue to be at risk all the time. We can't reuse existing things like bank IDs. Mm-hmm. So and we end up in a stalemate between all the different elements of the ecosystem and it doesn't come together cohesively. Yeah. That's the worst case scenario, and that worries me. Mm-hmm. The best case scenario is that we recognize that what we have here is a golden opportunity to really make people doing jobs online, make their lives easy and secure and privacy enhanced. We have the systems there ready to use. And people talk a lot about open banking. So open banking's okay. I mean, I've done a lot of work in open banking. It's okay. The rails of it are great. They're based on OIDC and FAPI, and they're really good. So they've got a lot of flexibility and security built into them because of the protocols. But open banking itself is very limited in the data that it can exchange. So you need to go a step beyond. So there are other ways of releasing that data. The bank has the data, and they are looking at releasing that data into the ecosystem. But you need to be able to ameliorate that data, to be able to make it standardized, to build it so it's user-centric, to have privacy-first thoughts when doing this. So I think in the future, people are going to really take advantage of the data that's already there, but do it in a very privacy-enhanced, user-centric way. Mm-hmm. So one of the greats in identity died. I think it was earlier this year or late last year. The days just merge in my life. A man called Kim Cameron, and he wrote the 7 Laws of Identity back in 2005, I think it was. Wow. And that was it was a brilliant piece of work. And he was a great man, Kim, and he was the first one, I think, to put forward this idea of people having control over their data. Mm-hmm. And I think user-centric. And that has still carried through, but it sometimes doesn't get implemented. Mm-hmm. But in the future, that will be a core design remit in all of these systems. And we'll be able to reuse data that's already out there, like open banking, but more premium data. Mm-hmm. And, existing IDs, we'll be able to utilize the wallets that do fall out of this sort of very fluid market that there is at the minute. It's been invested into. They fall out. That we do have an element of decentralization. I cannot believe that decentralization in its purest form will exist, because you know what? You're always going to have to give someone your address if you want that pair of shoes shipped to you. Yeah. And then what do they do with that? Maybe something will come along to be able to, but then they have to share it with it gets complicated once you have to stop It gets complicated. But there will be a way of bringing these things together in best. And of course, then there's the Web3 identity question. Okay. Will identity form the backbone for Web3? Mm-hmm. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That feels like a whole extra episode right there.
It is a whole extra episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Turning to the work of identity, I feel like what you've given me here is kind of like a Pandora's box inside a Pandora's box inside of, I'm my brain is throbbing trying to keep up with all these different implications. So, like, tell me about the jobs and identity right now. What are the raw skills, either technical or interpersonal, that you need to succeed in this area? If people are listening to this and are like, yes, this sounds amazing, like, what should current students and people wanting to move into this area be learning and studying about now to catch up, and what should they be looking towards in the future?
Well, it's certainly very much a hot space to be in.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't work in identity, you certainly will touch you at some point if you work in the tech sector.
Yeah.
So technically, if you're not a software programmer, you don't have to be to work in this space. I'm not a software programmer.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid. It is useful, actually. I tell you that it is useful to understand. Sure. It is useful. It's helped me a lot because I can't code it. It does help. Yep. But understand the protocols. So get involved in the protocols are all done as working groups within initiatives like W3C or Kantara.
Yes. Right.
Or they do all of that work. And for individuals generally, they're free to join. Certainly for students, they'll be free to join, I'm sure. Don't quote me on it, but I think they are. Mm-hmm. And you can get involved in that. You can just, even if you just watch the email exchanges, between these are all world experts working in these working groups. Mm-hmm. So get involved in those working groups in W3C and Kantara initiative. In the UK, there's a thing called OIX where they do a lot of identity projects. You probably couldn't easily get involved in them, but they publish the results. You can see the kind of things that people are working on. That's interesting. I'd say so protocols, definitely get involved in those if you're interested in that kind of thing. And you don't have to be a software programmer to understand protocols. Mm-hmm. In fact, people who write the best, who get involved, people are linguists, for example, who get involved, social scientists, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But also developers as well. And but also on the design side, UI, UX, that's a really important aspect of the identity space, understanding like human behavior and the interaction. I'm hoping that more anthropologists and behavioral scientists are involved in this space, because we really need to be engaging these people, because this is where human beings and technology truly intersect.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So what tell me about the insights that anthropologists could bring to this space?
So at the minute, I'm working on a project with a master's degree at Durham University in the UK. And I'm working on how proverbs affect human behavior from an evolutionary perspective.
Proverbs like a stitch in time saves 9, or measure twice at once kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. So as I've gone through that, I've realized how important language is in, changing behavior, right, and encouraging people to act in a particular way, right. Cybersecurity awareness training, in particular, right, is would really benefit from this side of. But going back to identity, so in the identity space, understanding how human behavior evolves means that you can understand why humans behave in a particular way. Mm-hmm. So when you design a particular, so for example, when I was working with the UK government helping to design user journeys for interaction with their system,
right?
That involved a lot of processing of, well, would someone do that at that point, and or would they do that? Yeah. So understanding how people interact with their surroundings, and if something happens to them, that's it. So understanding human behavior is a really important aspect of digital identity design, and understand how language impacts human behavior. Mm-hmm. So, for example, proverbs are really powerful little pieces of, information. And I'm sure that you could use proverbs to help to encourage people to act in a particular way within the context of a user journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Encourage them to. So, for example, when you are sort of verifying someone is true, or setting up a bank account or something like that, and taking them through a process which is very long-winded and tiring for them, you could use pithy little statements. Mm-hmm. Yeah. to encourage them to, do something, that sort of thing. I think it'd be something that would certainly be worth exploring anyway. But I think anthropology in particular, because they understand humans and how we act, that would add a lot of information into the design of these systems.
Now, talking, we've come to it several times, but it seems like a big problem with sort of adopting a workable identity system across lots of different sort of competing factions is going to be sort of communicating the importance of sort of making something universal. Do you think there's going to be a sort of identity translator type role where people where their main job, almost like an evangelist, where you're sort of making people understand that, maybe you make 1 cent more per use if you use your own proprietary one, but it's going to be ultimately better if we sort of use something that flows across multiple pipelines?
That's an interesting thought, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that happening maybe in digital form. Maybe when we go to Web3, maybe that would be actually an intrinsic part of getting people to interact securely as well with their identity. Yeah, that's
based on the way people communicate online, it seems like we could use a few more sort of mediators in terms of progressing ideas and so forth, and I'm always just trying to sort of find options for people who want to get into this space but feel intimidated by the sort of tech side of things. But if you're a compelling people who understand
language, people who understand language have a lot to give to this particular sector, because it is where human beings need to be able to use technology seamlessly. And the trouble is that identity in particular isn't just about technology. It's about processes, it's about people, it's about understanding what people want and how to convey it to them in a way that they understand, because the mass demographic that citizen ID and consumer ID has to cope with, there's no one size fits all. I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that through years.
Yeah. A lot of banging your head against the wall for years and years. So you sent me a link to a nice looking organization called Women in Identity. Do you want to talk about them a little bit and other resources or support organizations in this space? Do you have any advice for sort of networking in the identity space?
Sure. Although I am a rubbish networker, I have to say. The Women in Identity it's set up by some of the sort of stalwarts of the industry, and it's about trying to, because like the cybersecurity industry, the identity industry didn't seem to have a lot of women in it. I was always the only woman in the room, and often with tens of men surrounding me, and it is a little bit daunting sometimes. Although I am a bit of a hard case now, so not so much, but it used to be.
Right.
But the women that came along to kind of try and redress the balance and give a voice to women in the sector, to encourage women to join the sector. Yeah. So they'll put out a regular jobs notice to try and get women to apply for jobs in the sector. Nice. They regularly talk at all of these sort of big conferences in identity, and it's this. I mean, I was an active member when it first started, but I've sort of fell by the wayside because of health problems and stuff, and just workload basically. But the stalwarts are still doing a massively important job in the industry. Like the women in, the security sort of groups, trying to get more women, more voices, because one of the important things about digital identity is that it affects everybody. It's a mass demographic technology. It needs everybody involved in the design of it. It needs everybody to voice an opinion on it, whether you like that opinion or not. And
going back to what you said before about not being able to sort of photograph, your passport and your face at the same time, this especially, I mean, with identity, you're going to be having people access this from a lot of different sort of places and experiences and backgrounds. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So women identity has expanded since it started, and it's not just about women and identity. It's about, it's trying to give any sort of like minorities in this, a voice, like disabled people, people in sort of digital poverty, that type of thing. Yep. A bit of a sort of like, hello, I'm here. Can you please include me when you design your systems?
Nice.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Love it. All right. So as we wrap up today, Susan, do you want to tell us a little bit about Avoco Secure and your services and some of the projects you're excited about to unveil later this year and next year?
Yeah, sure. So there's one big project that I still can't mention the names of, annoyingly. But so one of the golden chalices of identity is to be able to reuse already verified data, to be able to reuse it rather than reinvent the wheel, right? So we used to do pure identity provisioning, and we realized that, oh my God, this is a nightmare space to be in, but people need the plumbing. So we worked it. So we already had quite pieces already anyway, and so we sort of like created a set of APIs. And we use those APIs now to connect the ecosystem. So this particular project is using some tier 1 banks in the UK, connecting them to a government service in the first instance. And we sit in the middle. You can't see us. We're just middleware. You don't see anything. So we're invisible. And it just connects the two pieces together with the end user in the middle. So it's user-centric, privacy enhanced. And it allows the data to flow between those two services nicely and seamlessly. So the bank's already done a lot of KYC checks on that data. It uses the open banking rails and OIDC, but it's a bit more than that because, like I said, open banking only gives you a couple of data points. This can give you, I think, up to 25 data points, if I'm right, if requested by the server, if allowed by the person in the middle. You can also, obviously, you can obfuscate it, minimize the data, and do all of that sort of thing. Yeah. And then it just allows data flow, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. But it's going to it sounds simple, but it's actually quite revolutionary.
It doesn't sound simple. I just want to let you know.
It's the swan analogy with the little legs. The little legs. And you only see what the little legs doing that.
Right. Oh my God, fabulous. So, all right, it's plug time. If our guests want to see Susan Morrow's various work, writings, or contact your company, where should they go online?
So Infosec Institute resources.
Yep, resources.infosecinstitute.com. Yep. Go talk to us. Yep. Check out contributors and find Susan's many great writings on there.
I do more newsworthy stuff, newsy stuff, high level stuff at Cyber News.
Thought leadership. There you go.
See us online. I specifically talk about identity.
Okay.
And it's all over the place as well. Also on our website, avocoidentity.com.
Avoco Identity, okay.
Yeah, avocoidentity.com is where you can contact us.
Got it.
Kind of all over the place, actually. Seem to like get around a bit. It's because I'm better at writing than I am talking.
Okay. You're doing fine. And can people contact you on LinkedIn as well?
Oh, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
we have a lot of listeners that like to connect with our guests and ask you questions.
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I came off because I couldn't stand it anymore.
No, we're not doing that now. All right. Well, Susan, thank you again for coming back to Cyberwork. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, Chris.
And as always, I'd like to thank you all for listening to and watching the Cyberwork podcast on an unprecedented scale. Our numbers have shot through the roof in the last couple of months. And so we are absolutely delighted to have you all along for the ride. If you like what you're hearing, share it with your friends, maybe subscribe to our YouTube page or put us in your podcast feed. Also, go to infosecinstitute.com/free to get your free cybersecurity talent development ebook. It's got in-depth training plans for the 12 most common job roles, including SOC analyst, penetration tester, cloud security engineer, information risk analyst, privacy manager, secure coder, and more. We took notes from employers and a team of subject matter experts to build training plans that align with the most in-demand skills. You can use these plans as is or customize them to create a unique training plan that aligns with your unique career goals. So one more time, just go to infosecinstitute.com/free or click the link in the description below and you can get your free training plan. That is all. Do it. infosecinstitute.com/free. Thanks once again to Susan Morrow, and thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we'll speak to you next week. Bye now.